Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the NBA Front Office Show. Appreciate all the support that we've been getting lately. Make sure you do subscribe. Don't forget to turn on notifications as well. Exciting topic today. We're talking about the players who are most likely to get traded this offseason. Keith, I can't wait to dive into some of these.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be one of those off seasons to kind of give an overview of what we're looking at. Is there's only a handful of teams with cap space, and some of those teams aren't the best teams in the league, and they're teams that maybe might not go the cap space route. So that says to me, there's a chance we could see a lot of trades. There's that's going to be the best way to improve for some of the contenders or near contenders. That's probably the best way for them to move things forward. So I think we've got a really good chance to see some trades, and as everybody should know by now, if you're new to the channel, maybe you don't know, but if you listen to the podcast, we're not hot take guys who are going to throw out crazy nonsense trades like, LeBron for Steph Curry and just cause, right? We're not going to do that, but these are realistic names that are kind of out there, names you're hearing about and guys, you may see on the trade block one way or another. So let's dive into it. Let's start with number one. We're not going to spend a lot of time on this because you can find the video where we talked about this guy extensively, but Ben Simmons. News today that Rich Paul, his agent, Clutch Sports, met with Daryl Morey to talk about what their plan is for Simmons, what the future looks like for Simmons in Philadelphia. My guess is that was sparked a little bit by some of the comments that were made by Doc Rivers and Joel Embiid and some of his teammates. So my guess is the Sixers are going to explore Simmons trades. I think it's my feeling is it's hard to bring a guy back after some of the things that were said about him here in the last few days as following their playoff loss to the Atlanta Hawks.
Yeah, this is all about damage control now for the 76ers. They're going to be very hesitant with any of their comments. They're not just going to come right out and say, yep, we're trading him, because then there goes all of their leverage. They're going to talk about the good things that they really like about Ben Simmons. Of course, we already heard the story about, they've got a plan to fix his jump shot. Like that's, never happened ever before. No one's ever come up with a plan to fix that for Ben Simmons. But look, they're going to do what they can to reclaim some kind of leverage. But I do expect him to be one of the guys that moves on this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's probably really likely. We'll see. I think less likely is a guy we've also talked about extensively in another video, and that's Kemba Walker. There's a sense that the Thunder kind of acquired Walker because that was the price of doing business to get another first round pick in there in the Al Horford exchange, and that they will look to move him because that's not really what that they're at that point of acquiring a player like him. I don't think it's overly likely he moves this offseason. I think that's probably next year kind of move, similar to Horford, where he goes. Their medical staff has gotten pretty high marks for doing well with players. Horford himself gave them a lot of credit in his introductory press conference with Boston, reintroductory press conference with Boston, I guess is a better way to put that. But yeah, it's I think with Walker, it's probably keep him there for a year, let him rehab, build back his value some with some good play on the court, and then they'll look to flip him, a year or so down the line.
Yeah, it's the Chris Paul playbook. That's exactly what they're going to look to do here with Kemba Walker. Now, I have seen some reports saying that that another Kemba trade is probably coming, maybe this offseason. But again, you'd have to have just the right buyer out there. And at $36 million, that's not an easy contract to match in terms of making a trade legal. So you have to find a team that not only wants Kemba Walker right now, really wants him on the roster, but is willing to pay what it would take to give the Thunder something that they like while being willing to absorb that much salary, which might be a tough ask. So maybe waiting for him to rehab his value a little bit, that may be the path to go. But, another guy that we do need to talk about, Tristan Thompson. I mean, he's in the news a little bit for some other things too. But this, for a lot of teams around the NBA that are looking for sort of a backup big man, a guy who can do a little bit of work on the boards, maybe he's an option out there. But I mean, Keith, this is the guy you're pretty familiar with.
Yeah, I think the thing with Thompson now is Boston is now kind of overloaded with bigs. You've got Horford in the mix, and I know some have suggested, well, Horford may not be there long term. Well, Thompson's not probably there long term either. He's got one more year under contract, about 9.7 million or so. Going this second year is the second year of that 2-year deal he signed. But yeah, I think Horford. The thing is they're not going to flip him again right away. It's not. Yeah, it may not be. This is the final stop of his career career. It may not even be the final place he plays on this contract, but I don't think it's going to happen. So now you've got him, you've got Robert Williams. They acquired Moses Brown in that trade, who they seem to at least have some interest in, checking out and see what he looks like. Grant Williams is still there. That's a guy who's played his best minutes as a small ball five. And then Tristan Thompson, and that starts to become a little bit too much when it really looks like Brad Stevens is probably going to build a roster for new head coach Ime Udoka that is a one big offense where you play one big at a time. And Horford's days of sliding over to the four are basically over, though he could still do it here and there against certain teams, but in general, that's not going to be something you see. So to me, that says Thompson probably on the move. There's still a lot of teams who really like him around the league, see him as, all right, he can still play some defense. He's a really, really good rebounder. He gave the Nets, a lot of, work on that end in that first round series. He did some stuff on the glass. So, yeah, I don't think they'll have a hard time moving him. It's not going to return a incredible package or anything like that. But if that helps get a veteran point guard in or just frees up a roster spot and some more salary flexibility, I think you could see the Celtics go that direction.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's a guy who would make a lot of sense to move on from. And another guy that's been talked about for a long time, for years now, we've talked about this, CJ McCollum. Is it finally time when the Blazers are going to break up the McCollum-Lillard duo, where there's always been quite a bit of skill set duplication, but obviously there's going to be a new head coach there in Portland. I think this is finally the time when they pull the trigger and CJ McCollum goes elsewhere. I mean, there's obviously rumors flying about them in the 76ers, maybe some sort of swap around Simmons and McCollum. I just think at some point the Blazers are going to have to pull the trigger, and I think it's going to be this offseason.
Yeah, I think we're closer than we've ever been. I think, Portland needs to really consider, all right, what is it we're trying to do, right? Because they've got to kind of look at it and say, boy, could we have been one of these teams that made this kind of run in this year? And it just didn't really happen for them. So in the logical place to start is with that Dame CJ pairing. Dame's not going anywhere until Dame says, I want to go somewhere. And so far, Dame's not saying that, right? So, we'll see if that ever changes, but for now, that's not a thing he's saying. So then we, start to look at CJ McCollum as a, that's probably your the dog's hanging out there in the background. I don't know if you can see her. She's super interested in this. So it's CJ McCollum becomes the more interesting guy there, right? Big salary, a guy who I think a lot of teams look at and say, what could he be if he had his own team? Could he be a 25 to 30 point per game scorer instead of 20 point per game scorer or something along those lines? And that I'll add it here because we're kind of in the Trailblazers section. Yusuf Nurkic had some interesting comments after they lost. He's on a non-guaranteed contract, a partially guaranteed contract that it's expected that'll become fully guaranteed. But that's another guy that they could explore trading. If Derek Jones Jr. opts in, do they look at trading him? My guess is he opts out and looks for somewhere else because he just didn't play all that much, but we'll see what that looks like on that positioning there. But yeah, the Trailblazers are going to be a very interesting team because I think they're looking at it as this might be our last best chance to really kind of rebuild around Damian Lillard before maybe his patience finally does wear thin and he says, all right, guys, I've done everything I can here. It's not going to happen. If I want to win, I've got to move on elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? They have to try something here, and it's going to have to be something, I don't want to say drastic, but it's going to have to be something impactful. They can't just run back what they had last year and expect a different result with a different head coach. You've got to put in some new pieces, and that's going to be really important. And I think the dog cameo, Keith, suggests that CJ McCollum is indeed going to be moved. The dog has spoken.
Could be. That's it. Could be. I'll have to find out. I'll get her. She's now moved on to other things, so I'll have to get her opinion on that later today. I thought you were going to go to the dog, the guy who gets dogged all the time in Dallas, Kristaps Porzingis. Look at that for transitions. Don't ever say we're not professional here. But Kristaps Porzingis, is he going to go somewhere? That's probably one of the bigger names that I think a lot of people feel certain may get moved. The challenge with that one is I don't have a front office right now. They don't have a general manager. They don't have a head coach. So we don't really know, how the new folks are going to feel about Porzingis. Maybe you get in a front office and a coach that says, hey, if we use him in this way, it'll really work for us. We can make some great stuff happen. And maybe that's the direction, that one ultimately goes. But yeah, Porzingis, that's going to be one to keep an eye on. It's, similar to McCollum, so similar to Kemba Walker, Ben Simmons, all these guys that we've mentioned so far outside of Thompson. Thompson. These are all 30 million plus players.
Yeah.
So that, limits it a little bit. But those are when the moves for those kind of big salaries tend to happen in the offseason because everybody has a lot more flexibility. You can do, those 4-for-1 trades that sometimes those trades, necessitate with roster size and those kind of things. So, yeah, I think there's a good chance Porzingis is on the move. I would say of all the guys we talked about so far, taking out that Kemba already get traded once already,
Right.
I would say he's probably second most likely on this list to get traded. I think and I'm going to put him behind Thompson, not behind Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, I think Porzingis is an interesting situation. I think that the opinion of fans right now in terms of his value is going to be very different than the opinion of NBA executives in terms of his value. And I'm not saying that he's got tremendous value or anything, but he's not as bad as people are making him out to be. I mean,
No.
the dude just had a 20-9
Same
season.
with Simmons.
Right? Yeah, and same with Simmons as well. He put up 20-9 over the season. The playoffs were bad, but we don't want to fall prey to recency bias. The playoffs 13-5, but how much of that was just he was in a terrible matchup? Like if they had played anyone other than the Clippers, Porzingis probably would have been a very different player, would have been more effective. And bigs who have trouble exploiting teams who go small, that's a whole other conversation that we can have. But Porzingis, does still have skills that matter in the NBA, and so I think he could be somewhat in demand depending on finding a team that's willing to take on that contract. And if the Mavs can find the right taker, it sounds like maybe there's some chemistry issues between Luka and Kristaps. If that's the case, I could very easily see them moving on from him.
Yeah, and the Mavericks are in a position where they've got a lot of great options this offseason because they can do a lot of different things. They could be a cap space team and create 30 million plus in cap space, which is enough to, these guys coming off the first round rookie scale. That's enough to throw a max contract offer at one of those guys. Or they could, kind of, double down and re-sign Tim Hardaway Jr. and bring him back on a contract and use Porzingis as their main thing there. And you may see, I've heard some people suggest, hey, what you're going to see ultimately happen is they're going to try to, them or another team's going to try to get kind of a more rugged power forward option at the 4, and then bring in Porzingis as your 5. And he's going to be a stretch 5, kind of a la Miles Turner-ish kind of player there, where mostly plays on the perimeter and those kind of things. Because the days of him, dreaming about him going down into the post and putting a 6'4" guy on him, those days are over. I mean, the team I cover, the Celtics, they regularly defended him with Marcus Smart because they knew he wasn't going to go down inside and hurt them at all. So we'll see where that one goes. That leads us, I think, to another place. I mentioned Miles Turner.
I was going to say, that's another great transition there.
Yeah, these transitions are pretty solid, huh? I think we're doing pretty good with this.
That's right.
Yeah, that's it. The Pacers, they're a team a lot of people have an eye on. Now, they just news broke they're going to hire Rick Carlisle today. I don't think the Pacers have officially announced it, but Carlisle kind of did with some comments to ESPN. So he's going to go in there. But the expectation is that they're going to explore splitting up that Turner-Sabonis pairing in the front court, that they've kind of given it the run it needs to know it's probably not going to happen. Sabonis probably sticks because he is proven to be a 2-time All-Star. He's a guy who's been there for a while. And then we'll see what happens with Turner, but he's a guy who fits a lot of places as kind of, again, shooting 5, can block some shots and those kind of things. You put him with the right group of guys where other guys rebound and things like that, they'd fit. New Orleans, please make a call. Turner alongside Zion. That seems to be about the perfect fit. But
and just find someplace for Steven Adams to go.
Yeah, as you had mentioned before we started, though, there's a bunch of other guys there you could look at, too, that, could be up, and guys whose names have been kind of at least thrown around the rumor mill some.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, you've got guys like Malcolm Brogdon, right? That's another guy whose name has popped up in a lot. Now, I think they would want a lot for him, but that's somebody else that you could certainly look at in a trade from the Pacers side of things. I think that there are going to be some moves made there. I don't think they're happy with where they finished up this year, just as kind of being a mediocre squad. So I think they're a team that is primed to make a move here.
Yeah, and I think the TJ Warren stuff has died down a little bit now. I think that was mostly related to Nate Bjorkgren, but we'll see. If he's still not happy there, that's another guy that I think teams would look at and say, hey, this guy, could come in, be a 3-4 for, many teams, provide some really good scoring. We all know what he did in the bubble, when he absolutely kind of played out of his mind for the Pacers. So yeah, I think TJ Warren is a guy who could be on the move. So we'll see. And then team, I know we talked about them a little bit when we did our draft lottery
Yeah.
recap. But I want to mention the Golden State Warriors are going to do something. They are not just going to add two more rookies, stand pat, and roll back with what they have. I really do think they're going to look to pairing both of those picks, one of those picks with James Wiseman, seeing what that can get them. Kelly Oubre via sign and trades, and if you're not hearing us mention sign and trade guys,
That's
we're
coming.
going to do a whole show just about sign and trade guys. So just hey, hang tight. So you guys are wondering about Spencer Dinwiddie, Lonzo Ball. I know Trevor wants to talk about
Dennis
Dennis
Schroeder.
Schroeder's
Come on.
incredible sign and trade value. But yeah, those guys will come in a separate show. But I want to mention Oubre in there because I think that's kind of part of the overall Warriors thing. I don't think they'll move off Wiggins. I think that's probably a year or two away from that contract, being really movable. Draymond's name comes up a lot, but I just can't see it. I think he's one of those guys so much more valuable to them than anybody else. But I do think the Warriors are going to be very, very active in doing something this offseason.
Yeah, Steph Curry isn't getting any younger. They've got some draft picks here. They've got 7 and 14. That gives them an opportunity to go out there and get somebody, get a piece that's going to propel them, hopefully, from their perspective, back up to the top of the Western Conference. And when you've got a team with guys like Steph Curry, like Clay, you pull out all the stops. You do what you need to do to put together a winning squad and give yourself a chance to win a championship. And so that's what I expect them to do. I expect them to make some kind of a move to land an impact piece, and that might mean packaging up some of the guys that they have under contract right now, add them to those picks, and then they're off and running.
Yeah, and speaking of draft picks coming, then that may have changed plans a little bit the way the draft fell. There's a lot of buzz that the Houston Rockets could maybe explore trading Christian Wood.
Yes.
The idea being if the Rockets zone in on Evan Mobley as being the guy for them at number 2, remember they fell from 1 to 2 in the draft. So Cade Cunningham's out. He's going to go to the Detroit Pistons. We know this. But if the Rockets tab Mobley as their guy, there's a lot of thoughts of can Mobley and Wood play together. Now, Wood and Kelly Olynyk played together some, not a lot, I think, but I think it was some. And Wood has played the 4 some in his career. Mobley is seen as a 4-5 guy, and for where the Rockets are at right now, it's not a necessity to trade them. Play them together and find out, right? I mean, what if you lose a few games? You're going to lose a few games anyway. It doesn't really matter. But the thought is, by the time that team is really ready to contend, Christian Wood will be off that contract by that point. And then what does it become, right? Then what do you do then? Because then it's all right, where are we going with Christian Wood here? So I think that is a something to keep an eye on, I guess is the best way to put it, because that contract very easily movable for a very good player that kind of fits in a whole bunch of places in the modern NBA. I think on most really good teams, he's probably a 5 that can rebound and score for you really at all 3 levels. He's a pretty good scorer, and he was showing some signs of his passing coming along, and his defense is not. He's not going to be an all defense guy, but I think it could be passable with the right guys around him.
Yeah, he's a guy that I like a lot. He's on a good contract. I can definitely see him being moved. But like you said, I don't think there's as much urgency to move him as there might be some of these other guys, Porzingis, Tristan Thompson, Simmons. Because again,
absolutely,
worst case scenario for the Houston Rockets. Oh no, we lose more games. Shoot, more ping pong balls. I mean, it's not a pressing need, but if the right deal comes along, then maybe it's something they consider. I do want to throw in one name to the end of our list because I got to do it. My guy Kyle Kuzma, the boy who lived, the sole survivor, or as I've been calling him this season, the chameleon. I could definitely see this being the offseason where the Lakers finally make the move. Magic Johnson had some interesting comments the other day about how Kuzma's already checked out and he knows he's being traded. He removed any mention of the Lakers from his Instagram account. He's been in trade rumors since the day he got to Los Angeles. I think the likelihood that he gets traded is higher now that his deal is up to $13 million in terms of getting any kind of a return. Logistically, that matters. I think it's a higher possibility now that he gets moved than at any other point in his career. So that's something that I'm keeping an eye on as well.
Yeah, and I think that's good because I think him and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, just strictly if you start looking at math, those are the salaries that can get you an impact player if you're the Lakers. Now you're going to run into, you got to still fill out a 15 to 17 man roster, so that gets
That gets tricky.
now you're talking a whole lot of guys playing for the minimum there. But I could see that being the move. If not in the offseason, I think that's probably their biggest in season trade chip. Again, a guy who you put him in the right place, which the Lakers aren't necessarily the wrong place, but where he can be, kind of a shooting floor, space the floor guy for you, guy who can do some scoring there. He's also a guy that you could see him going to a team that's not so good, doesn't have as much pressure, and he piles up a whole ton of stats and people start to get super excited and those kind of things. So, for fantasy basketball purposes, if Kyle Kuzma landed on a bad team where he was going to get 20 shots a night, snap him up, right? Because he's going to, put up numbers for sure. But, and hopefully, if he gets traded after just signing an extension, this will put to rest now and forever that Kyle Kuzma is not better than Jason Tatum.
I thought we've already gotten there. Have we not?
I mean, I've been there. I think there's a whole half of NBA fandom that lives there. I think there's one loud, vocal fan base that still might want to make that an argument on occasion. But no, I'm just poking fun because we know that was a real discussion a couple years ago.
A while ago, yeah. I think I get more "can we trade Kyle Kuzma" comments than comments towards any other Laker right now. Like, he is the most polarizing guy, with majority, probably 70-30 split between trade Kuzma quickly for whatever you can get versus, no, he's not that bad, hang on to him, right? So I don't think Lakers fans are going to be making that argument anytime soon, nor should they. Do not make that argument.
Absolutely. But where I feel on stuff like this is you don't make trades by being rash. You ain't going crazy. I don't think, again, like we talked about with Ben Simmons, Kristaps Porzingis, Kyle Kuzma is not as bad as some people would have you think he is. Is he a limited player? Absolutely. But there's a reason he only get paid $13 million. It's not like this guy's making, $25 million plus a year. He's on a very reasonable contract for what he does, which is a scoring forward. I think that's fine. And that's a guy at that number. If you're a good team, you play him on the bench, maybe start him if your other four guys are really strong, do your thing. But I think the math just tells us Kuzma, Caldwell Pope, the two of them together, that's your match if you're going to go make something happen via trade, unless Harrell opts in or something like that, then that becomes a other little bit of a different story. But that's a good one that you added there at the end.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up for our list of players that we think are the most likely to be traded heading into what I am going to start calling the summer of the trade, because like he said, there's just not that much out there on the free agent market, but there's a lot of teams that want to shake up their rosters, want to make improvements before heading into next season. And that means they're going to have to start wheeling and dealing. Guys, make sure you do subscribe right here to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel. Fire it off in the comments down below. Who do you think's going to get moved? Is there somebody we forgot on this list? Let us know, and don't forget to turn on those notifications as well. Till next time, see ya and stay safe.